Hi there, welcome to the Arlington Tiger Life Movie Review Podcast. I'm your host, Ethan Dunlap, and today we're reviewing Dune 2021. I want to get my biggest complaint out of the way, because there really only is one complaint that I have, and that the majority of people who have watched this movie really do have. And that's that the movie serves as solely exposition. This isn't your standard 3-act movie where you have your beginning, middle, and end. Instead, this is all really just one big beginning approaching the middle. It doesn't leave you on any conclusion at all. In fact, it ends abruptly. And it's fine that it ended the way it did, solely because every other department, the cinematography, the acting, the visuals, the music, the story, all of it knocked it out of the park. The movie really is an art book. You could really choose any spot to pause the movie and it'll look stunning. The soundtrack for Dune matched up perfectly with its story. And that's something that movies can get wrong really easily, is that the soundtrack won't really go with the story that's being told. So you kind of have a story doing one thing and your soundtrack doing another, which can make it really offbeat. So with Dune, they both correlate so well that the story adds to the soundtrack and the soundtrack adds to the story. It really enhances the entire movie and performance. And speaking of performance, let's move on to the cast. The cast for this movie was really, I think, what sold the movie and hyped it up so much was that when you watched all the trailers and when you saw the posters, it was a stacked cast. Like, the poster was just full of recognizable faces that really everyone knows from movies. And while sometimes that can be a bit of a problem for movies, having to rely on their Class A actors, sometimes the story can suffer a bit by making sure that these people are in here and that they get a certain amount of screen time. That's not the case with Dune, thankfully. Every actor in here plays their part perfectly. The movie doesn't really focus on highlighting all these different actors. Instead, it focuses on the story where it should, and because of that, these amazing actors are able to give a performance that adds to the story instead of taking it away with highlighting their character. I've been talking a lot about how these elements affect the story, and so moving on to the story, which is where some people have problems with it, saying it's a little bit too boring. And the reason that people are calling it so boring is because it does so much world building, and because it really serves as a part one to a multiple part franchise. So you're not really watching a normal movie that has your beginning, middle, and end. Instead, you're watching a movie that has its beginning, and it's setting up really the foundation for what the rest of these movies will go off of. As of right now, we know part 2 is confirmed. So at the very least, we will get a 2-part series that tells a full story, and at the track it's going, it will be a very satisfying one. Now, going back to really the main criticism that really everyone has with this movie is that it's just too long and too boring. And, there is so much world building in there that it needs its 2.5-hour runtime, or it can't do it effectively. There is so much backstory and character building in this movie that it needs to take its time instead of rushing through it just to get to the action and the big climax. So I see that more as a plus than a minus or than a critique for it, solely because when part 2 rolls around, it's going to make it that much better, because it's going to feel more deserved and it's going to feel more natural than having to cram it all into one movie. And so because Dune is setting up this really big story, it also has to get location correct. And location is a huge part of the story. And again, they of course knock it out of the park with the location. Everything looks real and believable. It really makes you feel like you are on a different world, and that you are really immersed through the story, through the soundtrack, through the cinematography, and through the location. And I think that's really the biggest thing that Dune gets right, is that it takes all of these different elements and it attributes them perfectly to make one big masterpiece. Dune right now is getting a lot of praise, of course, for all of these reasons, that it's able to take all of these things and make something really, really unique and special with it. Dune is a movie that really stands out. It doesn't follow your normal movie tropes, and because it's taking so many risks and because it's doing something different, it's getting such a positive response. So plugging Dune into the Rorometer is going to hit a 90%. Dune hits all the right points. It has an amazing cast, beautiful cinematography, a great soundtrack, and a really immersive story that builds the world and the characters. That's it this time for Arlington Tiger Life's Movie Review Podcast. I'll see you in the next one.